Peace and blessings. Today we're going to be talking about the ape in Scripture, the context used to describe what the ape is and how we're to understand it. So let's look at verse 265, which says, "You are already aware of those of you who broke the Sabbath. We said to them, be despised apes." So who are those who broke the Sabbath, and what is the Sabbath? We need to understand that in order to understand this concept of being disgraced apes. So let's talk about the Sabbath. So to create a Sabbath is to cut yourself off from the material world to worship God. So it sounds like a good idea, right? It sounds like worship. But have you ever thought about, okay, should you be cutting yourself off from the material world to worship God in the first place? Or should they be one, where your worship is seen in your works? So this gets a little tricky because of the language, but bear with me. I think you're going to understand. So, for example, prayer for some of us has become a retreat. It's become like a sabbatical. It's become a quick vacation from reality, right? You stop, you make your prayer, you read something. Now, the question is going to be, did you take it with you after you finished the prayer? Where did you implement it into your life, right? Is it something that you're doing when you worship or pray where you are removing yourself from reality to worship God? If so, that is a problem. Okay, that is a problem. God should be seen in our works, not just in our worship. And there really shouldn't be a separation. But if you're going to create one, how will you ever understand how to implement it into your real life? There's the question. And this is a real problem because we see it right now in religion where, hey, we appear that we're worshipers, but we're not seeing the progress. So what has happened? So for the Muslim, we have what's called the Friday congregational prayer. And we've called that Jummah. But there's a sign in the Jummah because we're told, go right back to work. You don't just come to the prayer and then never go back to work. And really in this Jummah, whoever the instructor is, the imam, they should be teaching in a way where we can see the worship in our material lives, in our careers, in our everyday life, and we should be able to implement it where there is no separation. So if you ask yourself, what was the last sermon or khutbah you heard, and you're able to ask yourself, well, what was it about? And you can answer the question, then that's a pretty good imam or pastor you got going there. But many times we can't. Let's just be honest. Many times we do not know. Okay, we just do not know. And a lot of times, if you think about it, it's because for most of us, for many of us, I'll say, our understanding, the level of our understanding of worship and scripture is limited to what we call mama teachings. Be good, don't kill, don't steal, love each other, be honest, be charitable. All of these things we know, but the scripture is a lot more detailed than that. Okay, and we should be able to take a lot more from it than those teachings. And you're not going to remember if that's all you're getting when you go to your prayer service. But the one who lives the ritual but does not embody it in reality, or is unable to implement it. That's your one-liner to remember. So when we separate God and the worship of God from our material world, the everyday life that we have, we are transgressing. Okay, that is something I think we really have to think about how we're approaching prayer. Are you in a mindset of where you're like, all right, I got 5 more minutes to prayer time. What time is it? Okay, is the sun set yet? Okay, let me check. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make this right after I finish. I got to go to the store. I got to get pick up my child from school. I got some work I got to do. Like that is setting aside a time for God. And really, that's not what you want to be doing. So once you reach adulthood, you can't worship without knowledge and logic. It doesn't make sense. Once you reach adulthood, your mind has, in all other aspects of your life, you're being educated, right? So it doesn't make sense to go to worship and not have some form of education there. Today we can just say it. Okay, we can just go ahead and say it. It makes you not want to pray, right? When you're just repeating something. I can speak for myself. I come across times in my life where I just felt like, okay, it's prayer time. Let me go make prayer and let me hurry up and finish and let me get back to what I was doing. I made prayer. I checked it off my list. How many prayers did I make today? That's not the right approach. I think many of us, if we're being honest, have gone through that at some point. I can understand that if you were a child, right? But as an adult, we shouldn't be going through that. It's easy to see benefits of the material world. We see them all the time, right? But how do you expect to pray when you feel like, okay, well, I'm praying, but where's the benefit in my spirituality? Where's the benefit? I don't see the benefit spiritually. If you're not changing as a person, you're not improving, you're not becoming what we call, you're not able to take on the divine attributes that God has set for us as goals to attain. This is how you start separating yourself in the prayer. So the separation of worship and the material life, it leads to the eventual just lack of worship altogether. So in the scripture, there are communities that created a worship day in which they separated their work from their worship, right? This is in the scripture. But they were so greedy for the material world that they set ropes and traps so that they could benefit from the material world on the day that they claimed was designated for the worship, okay? And doing this, they appeared to be elevating themselves, their character, their conduct. They appeared to be. But the reality is that they were clinging to the material world, okay? So they set aside a time for God so that they could function in the material world however way that they pleased. They wanted both, okay? And they didn't want to give anything up for their worship of God. The difference between man and animal is elevation of the spirit, taking on God's divine attributes. And this is how we see the human being come about, all right? The real man, not the ape. The one who looks like the human being, right? The ape. He looks like the human being, but he clings to the earth and cannot stand up for his lack of ability to worship God. Like the true human being. That is us at our full potential. That is the difference between us and these animals, especially the ape, right? Because he looks like us. And in that is a huge sign for man. So the second part of the verse says, we said to them, be disgraced apes. These are the people that created these Sabbaths and broke them. Okay. So when we create the Sabbaths and break them, God revokes us access to our higher self, the self that can stand up without clinging to the earth, the self that can die in the flesh and still live and with abundance. The self can only be manifested through spiritual development. So if you've ever seen the movie Pinocchio, that's a really good example of what this is about. So to become a real boy, he had to show his elevated human character, right? To qualify as a human being. So literally, think about all of the educated animals. There's some smart animals out there. They don't have the privilege and the benefit of getting to examine creation to the degree where we realize that there's a creator and to begin to reverence the creator. They don't have that capacity. So in order to become a true human, we have to take that next step. But what if you're stuck? Okay, what if you look like an adult, but you act like a child? That is a lack of evolution, right? Similar to the ape looking like a grown man outwardly, but on the inside he lacks evolution. The same root, this in the Arabic for ape is the same word for the same root for the tick. The tick burrows himself in the earth. You're stuck in a mindset and in a disposition where you're clinging to the earth. You're unable to get out and do for self. You're unable to fully stand up and be a person, a human being. So in closing, this is what I want you to think about. I want you to ask yourself the question, were Adam and Eve monkeys? Okay, because you have to ask this question now that you understand spiritually what the ape is, and now that you understand that the human being is a spiritual creation. Were Adam and Eve monkeys? Got to think about it. If allegedly we've evolved from monkeys, I need somebody to tell me how this makes sense. Because to me it seems that Darwin completely left God out of the equation. In the scripture, God said he created man from a human soul that was only existing in the abstract. Then he made it evolve and materialize in the world to become a human person of excellence. We did not evolve from apes. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. We evolved from precious human life, and we become apes when we leave God. Thank you. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I hope to see you next time.